Hey everyone, welcome to How AI is Disrupting the MSP Tech Stack. So, just some quick housekeeping notes before we actually get started here. The recording for this session is going to be available at this same link immediately after the session is done. So, you'll probably be able to reload the screen, and within a few minutes, the recording will be right there, after it kind of compresses and all that does its thing. And so if you need to, you can come back anytime, or you can share this link as well. And anyone will be able to access the recording after registering. We are, if we have time at the end, going to do a Q&A. You can drop questions in the chat, of course. You can also drop anything you need to in the Q&A button. So that should be on your top right. In terms of the general tone of today's session, we're going to try to keep it very educational. However, I will say, in terms of the topic today and what we're talking about, which is the MSP tech stack, it's very product centric. So we have 5 executive founders here that are actually building products that live sort of within this stack. So we might sort of drift into, kind of product territory, but I just want to give you guys a heads up in terms of that. In terms of, let me see here. Sorry, quick note. I'm seeing some notes in the chat in terms of screen frozen or audio issue. It could be on your end. Just to do a quick refresh, let me actually show you the tech stack. So when we talk about the tech stack, this is ultimately what I'm talking about. And so we could do a whole session just on this, but we won't today. I think ultimately what we need to take away from this is that the MSP tech stack is very software centric, right? For you to be able to go start an MSP today, it would be very difficult to do so without going out and getting an RMN, getting a PSA, and basically just getting software that you're now going to use internally and then resell externally. When we talk about disruption, the disruption that we're talking about is this, which is the pace of innovation. So when it comes to software, the pace of innovation right now is extreme. So people are shipping at much faster rate, and they're doing so both with AI and using AI, kind of baked into the features, and then obviously using agents to actually ship the code. So this sort of graph in terms of the acceleration is really what's causing the disruption that we're talking about. So with that, I just want to sort of set the table. The format here is that we're going to go sort of category by category through the MSP tech stack. We're not going to cover all of it that we detailed in that chart, but we are going to show some major areas. And with those areas, each one of these founders or executives will kind of share their observations, we'll call them, on what's the disruption happening in that category and basically what they foresee the next 6 months or a year. And so the first person I'll bring up is Chris. So Christopher Sale, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. So Chris, give us a little quick intro, and then let's talk about service. So service is an area where obviously disruption is probably going to show its head, especially when you talk agentic AI, right? Because you have these sort of, in terms of the resource pool required to deliver service, it seems natural that it would sort of consolidate there first. So give me your thoughts on that and your observations for what's happening right now.
Sure. So Yeah, Christopher Sale, the CEO, co-founder of Super IT. I think a little bit of background. I previously ran an MSP for over 10 years here in Australia, and I'm also a software developer. So I have this kind of unique insight into the space. And I guess my observations, especially if you look at where the main disruption is happening, is which is in software development and coding tools. Over the last 2 months, the progress has just been significant, like extremely fast. And that's giving me a lot of confidence and my kind of conviction that disruption in the service space is coming. We all know it's coming, but it's coming quickly. I can foresee that, in the short term, it's like between 1 to 3 years, that we'll see over 60% of level one type IT support issues delivered by agents in a safe and secure way. I guess you can already see the progress in ticket triage and categorization and some of the simple applications of AI, being built by various startups and inbuilt into your tech stack right now. But what I'm talking about is like one step further. It's like what Super IT is building, which is truly agents that have access to your context, to your RMM tools, to your all your systems to deliver actual IT support. And so we're seeing it in our own product, the ability to tackle problems that aren't well defined and think about, like, a printer problem or your computer running slow and an agent safely and securely helping your end user or helping your engineers actually deliver that service. And so that's super exciting, but lots and lots of questions, right? And lots of like implications around security. I guess, like, if you look at these tools, these type of technologies are going to diffuse into other products that your customers are going to be using as well. So if you look at, say, the OpenClaw or the ClaudeBot kind of phase, once that matures into business ready tools, you're going to have these kind of a new way of getting support from your customers as well. So I think the second order implications of this is that there's going to be an explosion of demand for your service as an MSP. I don't foresee these taking jobs and demand going down. I see this being a massive explosion in service. You're going to have service requests from humans, but service requests from their AIs, requesting support from MSPs. And so to deal with this demand, I think that AI agents delivering service, like the maybe the what you could call the lower value stuff, the things that like engineers don't necessarily like, and that the small kind of level one work, I think it's going to be essential. It's going to be having AI agents like Super IT and other products is going to be essential to deal with this explosion of demand. So there's a lot of things to think about in the short term, and I think that from an MSP's perspective, it's really about what differentiates your service from the average. An LLM has like an average kind of approach, an excellent average about how it would deliver service or how it would deliver a particular workflow. And it's about defining what's different about your MSP service to that average, and documenting that is I think going to be really important in enabling you to use these agents to deliver a service that's in your style, that differentiates you from everybody else. So that's my kind of key observations at the moment.
So where that category started was essentially workflow automation, right? And where it's drifting into, and that's sort of enabling automation for an individual, for an organization to do more with AI in terms of like triaging tickets and classifying and all of that. Where it's going now is actually extending the actual technician base, right, with agents. Is that a pretty clear or accurate observation in terms of the primary sort of pace of the innovation there?
That's correct. I guess you could see, that workflow being a deterministic workflow where, there needs to be a certain step-by-step process that happens, and these LLMs can be really useful tools in that workflow, like creating a categorization on, understanding what status to move a ticket into, or, deciding a certain thing or summarizing a certain thing. So that's really good and that's mature. And I don't think that's going away. That's really important for certain workflows. You don't want an LLM to be doing really sensitive stuff. You need to know if this, then that, right? But there's this massive category of uncertainty where you need an LLM to do what a human does, which is search a space for a problem and a solution to that problem. And we're lucky in IT where it's a verifiable domain. You can check whether an issue has been solved or not solved in a binary way. And for those problems, these agents that are going to determine what the next step to take to try to solve that problem is going to be really, really powerful. And that's, yeah, definitely the next step that I'm seeing. And what we're building at Super IT, I guess, is this kind of step changing capability.
Awesome. And so with that, we're going to move to our next category. Thank you, Chris.
No worries.
And Pinar Ormici from Lexful is up next. Welcome, Pinar. So, Pinar, just give us kind of a quick, overview of you, what you're doing. And then obviously, what's interesting about documentation is it's context, right? So, again, kind of going back to when AI sort of first surfaced and everyone wanted to use it, naturally they're like sitting on their documentation as like, that's the treasure trove. Kind of everybody thought that. But then now the solutions that we use for these things, they need to keep up and they need to evolve. And so kind of help me understand the journey, both for the category and for you personally and what you're building.
Here I have an accent. Originally, I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I've been in the US for a very long time now. I've been in the tech space 20 plus years. I started my career as a systems engineer. So, I worked in some pretty important projects at Qualcomm before I moved into the business side. I've been in the MSP space for the last, I would say, 5+ years now. I was the CEO of another MSP vendor, MSP first vendor in SASE space before I moved to Lexful as their CEO. So documentation, you mentioned that it is about context, and I say to that, I wish, right? So documentation, that's, you want to be able to bubble up context because it is the most important thing to feed into AI agents and so on. But one of the longest standing issues that we've seen in the MSP space, if you talk to MSPs, if we talk to, in our case, to design partners and so on, is the fact that the current way of doing documentation is really broken. It's the original way of documenting tools was really built for storage, unstructured, across wikis, various documentation, across tickets and teams and emails and so on. And now we're trying to, of course, accelerate the MSP's journey in an AI first world. Unfortunately, though, for AI and AI agents to work properly, knowledge is king, and structured, up-to-date, accurate knowledge is the fuel that fuels these AI agents. So if the MSP documentation is broken, it really has fundamental challenges for the MSP operations that ultimately cost MSPs in margin. So it really costs MSPs margin, the way of doing things, the way of utilizing documentation tools just as storage.
So you had mentioned storage. There's also this component of like building documentation, right? And accelerating that. So like if you're accelerating how you can leverage the documentation, but then you can also accelerate the building of the documentation itself. Like I can very much see how there's this compounding benefit that's going to happen and is happening in terms of documentation. So where do you see that trajectory currently?
Yeah, so before we go into, auto creating documentation or autonomous knowledge that writes and rewrites itself, let's talk about why I say documentation is broken. Documentation is broken because, as we all know, documents go stale the moment they are written. I talked to many MSPs. They try to incentivize technicians on going and manually updating things after they learn new information, after there's a new ticket where they discover new things. But manual updates don't scale. And a lot of the times they actually just accept it that, hey, it is what it is, and tribal knowledge is where we're going to live. And the other reason why documentation is broken, because everything is unstructured, and the fundamental way of finding information is through keyword search. people waste a lot of time, Kevin, right? So you have on one side, you have manual entries, on the other side, you have keyword search. And what ends up happening is, of course, the technicians can really not find what they're looking for, or if they do, there are multiple versions of the same stuff. There are duplicates, you have no clue, there's a major change drift in what's been done. So what ends up happening, there's a lot of also disruption to what others are doing. So it ultimately ends up going to the teams and pinging other people who might know about the context, who might know where things lie, who might have the latest engagement with that client or with that ticket. So this results in a lot of wasted time. And ultimately what this means for the MSP at a larger scale, it becomes an economic problem, not a technical problem. It ultimately results in a lot of missed signals on what needs to be done, slower resolutions on when the customer has a need. Of course, it reduces your margins because now you're spending much more time in solving things. So, your bottom line is increased. And fundamentally, this also shrinks trust for the MSP clients, right? So it really, especially in this time and age, how do we move from these scattered docs and tribal knowledge into an AI native way of doing things, where not only you can find what you need contextually, instantly anchored to the right client, but to your point, how do we enable AI to detect gaps between what's being discussed in real time and what exists in your SOPs, in your knowledge base, in your runbooks, and automatically trickle that information to the right place in the right context, so that MSPs can focus on really creating revenue and delighting their customers instead of this manual way of doing things, which really doesn't scale.
So Chris mentioned the idea of like documenting your form of service delivery and like your flavor of service delivery, because number one, it's important just for your employees, your human employees, to know here's how we deliver service. But then if you are going to train an agent, right, to be able to replicate that, you need it documented. So in the same way of like a very tactical sort of takeaway is like, what do you think MSPs, regardless of solution, can do to kind of set themselves up from a documentation standpoint for success kind of going forward?
So the reason why we exist is to really help MSPs to solve this fundamental problem of documentation as it exists today, right? Meaning, ideally, the whole job we are trying to solve is how can we make sure your knowledge stays up to date, and then put that knowledge work for you 24/7. What this means is, to Chris's point, hey, you need to write the right documentation and then feed that into your this AI native knowledge operations layer, right? Like, we define ourselves as an AI operating layer, if you will, as the master record, single source of truth, system of record that can then fuel the AI agents, the workflows, the agentic ambitions of the MSPs. So as the system of record, not only we context engineered this model that is, I would say, deeply knowledgeable in the MSP and the IT, and then you feed this technician all your SOPs, onboarding guidelines, runbooks, and plus all the assets and the networking diagrams and the passwords and the history, operational memory from your existing clients. And then you put that data, work with AI, with this technician bubbling up the right contextual answers instantly, writing templates, creating runbooks, and giving you context for, hey, these are the gaps, this is what you can do with your clients, and so on. So the world is really going from, hey, doing things manually so that AI can work better, into how can we really automate the MSP operations so that it can just be this thing that gets stronger with every context that's consumed. It becomes smarter. It gives you even better answers, always permission aware, always contextual, and always anchored to the right client or the role who's asking for it.
Awesome. All right. And so with that, I'm going to bring up our next category, which is finance. And I'm going to bring up Raphael Sangili. So, Raphael, welcome.
Hey, what's up, Chris? It's okay, Kevin. How are you, buddy? You almost nailed it.
Oh, yeah.
Saying Gilly. It's okay.
Sangili. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
all good.
So, it's funny because, when we talk about AI, we talk about all this stuff, all the progress. There's things that we don't necessarily want. We want to be deterministic. And I think
Sure.
like finance and payments could be as close to that as possible because you want to be able to trust the numbers. You need to be able to trust the numbers, right? So it's
Totally.
almost a non-negotiable. So what are you seeing in terms of, and Benji Pays obviously is a payment solution for MSPs. And so help me understand the category a little bit
Sure.
and how AI is fitting into that currently.
Yeah, look, I think this you're bringing up, and everybody on here brought up some really great points. Look, AI is not going away. We're going to have to adopt it. We're going to have to accept it and figure out what parts of it do we want to incorporate in our business, and what does that look like, right? I mean, at the end of the day, finance is something you guys getting paid, especially accounts receivables, is the most important part, right? This is all great, fine and dandy, giving advice and doing all this stuff and providing your MSP services only works if you guys can get paid effectively, right? So this is one of those areas where it's like one of those questions where like what should be automated, what does need AI, and how do we expand on what we know to make better decisions, right? So we always talk about like automating the happy path. There's some things that don't necessarily require AI. It's just really strong automation and good documentation. Like if somebody's paying you every single month at the same time, all the time, the same way, that's an automation. You can just run a really smart automation that can give you insights as a business on like where gaps are, where you can improve things in the finance world. So, but all that only works if you actually know the outcomes of what that should look like, right? Like preventing good guardrails and understanding what the outcome is supposed to be is one of the hardest parts, right? Because if you don't know what the cake is supposed to look like when it's done, and this thing just produces this kind of like ugly looking cake, you're gonna be like, if you've never seen a cake before, you're walking around thinking this, showing this ugly cake to everybody, and be like, check out my cake. And people that know cake are gonna be like, that's not a cake, man. Right? So I think one of those things you want to look at is understanding. Do you have an understanding as a business of where you're trying to go, of what you're trying to do, and what this should look like? Then you can figure out where AI can augment, help you make better decisions, and understand what automations could be improved and what things you could leave fully to an agent, right? I always look at right now with the way the AI world's working, a lot of us are using AI in multiple facets of our business, right? We use it at Benji Pays internally all the time for marketing, for a lot of other things. But again, unless we actually know the outcome we're trying to produce with this AI, it trusting it completely to make the decision for us and lead us into that decision is something that we're still, especially with finance and accounting, is something that again I would highly recommend you guys get some second opinions on before you just fully trust the AI to make the decision for you, right? And again, understanding what does best in class finance look like. Those are all things that AI can provide great insights, but you as your business leader and understand the vision of where you want your company to go should take advantage of that, right? I think that's also like AI produces a lot of like questions for people, right? I think there's a great opportunity for AI because I think a lot of MSPs from my conversation are getting a little nervous about the AI and what it's going to mean for their business and their value they're providing to their clients and how they help their clients. Look, this has been the same problem that's been in the MSP space, God, as long as I can remember. I remember people were freaking out about cloud coming in and like, oh my God, the cloud is coming. Our MSPs are doomed, right? And then so if you realize that these are all opportunities within this chaos of kind of new stuff that's coming for you guys to provide really good consulting and advice to your clients, right? Their business, just like you are, we're all running a business the same way. They have a lot of the same questions you're facing in your business. What should we automate? How much of this should AI be introduced? And in that role as a consultant, if you see yourselves as just the IT guy, you're going to be in trouble, right? But if you understand that your role is really a business consultant that just happens to use technology as a tool to create outcomes for your partners and your business that you're supporting, that makes it a lot easier to really kind of understand where your role fits in, the value you provide, and then understanding how you can help produce and create those outcomes for your clients, right? So like we always tell people, look, automate the happy path, automate the stuff that's easy, that you know is replicatable, that's simple to do, and then use AI to give you better insights to make better strategic decisions and figure out where the holes are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Like when I was an MSP, I feel like the insight that we could have used the most was like, hey, when are we expecting have cash flow? When are we expecting to get paid? You know, because people tend to be late the same amount on average, right? They're always
Sure.
late, but they're like, you know,
Of
and
course.
because businesses have different cash flow cycles and they're tied up in the way that they do business. And so I think the AI could really lend some predictability to that, right? Or at least some insight into that predictability.
110%. If you think about it, look, if you're looking around and you're trying to figure out, a lot of us as you're growing, especially if you're in that trajectory of your growth mode as a business, an MSP, I'm sure a lot of you doing this right now, where some stuff gets kind of like lost in the shuffle, right? Some things get lost in the sauce, as they say, right? So like, if you're going through this and you don't really asking AI questions like, who are my top 5 kind of late, most late clients that pay me late all the time? Where are some things that I can improve my DSO on right now? How do I get my daily sales outstanding a little better? This is all really valuable insight that AI can provide that again helps you make strategic decisions on like what you do with your business. Like, I have a question just for the audience. Like, how many of you guys right now leverage AI, fully to just make the decision for you? Just trust the Claude or the Chat GPT response 100%. I'm like, yeah, those numbers look great, man. Right? I think it's always good to understand kind of what you're looking for and where you're going with your business. Like, again, I think there's a place for all this. I think AI is super exciting. It is the future. It's just understanding where it fits in your role in your business and where you guys are working with it.
Awesome. And so with that, I'm going to move us to the next category. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to bring up Anu.
Hey.
Ghosh, how are you?
Awesome. Ready for it.
Yeah. Okay,
let's go, Rob.
Yeah, we're talking cybersecurity now. So with this pace of innovation, the pace of change, right? We showed the chart. Everybody is innovating and not just the good guys, right? So the attack surface is changing. And from an MSP standpoint, they need to obviously protect the house, and they also have to protect their clients' houses, right?
That's right.
So, give us a quick intro for you and sort of how you see this trajectory going forward as well.
Yeah, so Anup Ghosh, co-founder and CEO of ThreatMate. ThreatMate is an AI native cybersecurity company that finds and fixes the security exposures on those attack surfaces you mentioned before the bad guys find and exploit them, right? It's really simple, right? You've got this motivated adversary. To your point, Kevin, they are using AI tooling because it just makes them better, right? And so now, if you're managing someone else's network, you're essentially in a race. Part of it is an arms race on tooling, but it's also a race in time to see who can find those exploitable security exposures first. Either you're going to do it and fix them, or the adversary is going to do it and exploit them, right? So where does ThreatMate come in is we leverage AI tools, specifically agentic technologies, to find the exploitable attack paths that adversaries will also find and exploit, but we find and fix them for you. And that's sort of the key to this. And in terms of AI tooling, the stuff that we're able to do today is the stuff that would cost you probably $35,000 to hire, a pen test team to do this, and they would find one path to the flag, so to speak, whereas we can enumerate them all.
So who's winning currently? Do you feel like the threats are escalating at a faster pace than the sort of preventative solutions currently?
We know
in terms
we
of
know
like
that's
how fast
the
they're
case.
going to market.
Yeah, we know that's the case, but Kevin, that's always been the case. Literally, the entire history of computer security, and trust me, I've been around for all of it, has been adversaries innovate faster than defenders do, right? And so the challenge has always been catching up. The real challenge is when on the defender side, we don't try and catch up. So, Anthropic released earlier this year how their toolkit was used by the bad guys to get onto a client network, reason about what they should attack and attack it. Pretty well documented on the Anthropic site. And if you saw the recent news, allegedly US forces did the same thing in taking out Maduro using Anthropic. And so yeah, bad guys, aggressors, whatever you want to call them. Obviously, US is not bad guys. I love the US, patriotic, all that. But we can all use tooling to find attack paths and, capture the target.
So what should MSPs be doing now? Could obviously this will only escalate going forward,
right,
as the tooling becomes more capable, right? And the agent swarms grow, right? So how can MSP sort of get ahead of this currently? And most importantly, like, how can they get their clients to start taking it seriously? Because I know, like, I've been there. That's one of the biggest challenges is you can lead the horse to water, right?
Sure.
But ultimately, you need to do what's in their best interest, and you need to convince them that they need to do that too.
Yes and yes and no. And I'll tell you the no part first. So security is not optional, and any MSP who sells security as an option is bound to get pwned. It's just the way it is. You pretty much have to say, if you want me to manage your network, you're going to want me to secure it, because I don't want you to get compromised, and I don't want the downstream liability of that compromise, right? We talk about left of boom versus right of boom a lot. Right of boom is what you do after compromise. That means detection, response, recovery, the full IR, all of it. Most MSPs are not equipped to do that, and obviously you tend to outsource MDRs. Left of boom is all the stuff that you can and should be doing to prepare that network for attack, to make it resilient, right? So back to your question, what is it that you can and should be doing? Well, there's two sides of that. One is kind of what you're required to do from, a compliance standpoint. And I think, my friend here, Dan, is going to talk more about what you got to do from an insurance standpoint. But then the second is the business opportunity. And that's the one I want to focus on, right? So if you're just managing networks, it is somewhat of a commoditized service. What you need are differentiators. And one really good differentiator is being able to both deliver cybersecurity as a service, but also delivering, the business value at every QBR that shows, hey, these were the security exposures we found and fixed over the last 3 months. And here's how we made your network more resilient. And that makes you relevant on the sales side, doing the cybersecurity risk assessments to show how that particular prospect is wide open to attack. What are those attack paths? How you can compromise them is powerful. Drop that report into the hands of a prospect, and you will close them. For your own clients, your QBRs, here's all the things that we found and fixed so that you're not compromised. How we increase your security score.
Andre said you have to give the horse salt before leading it to water. That's a good analogy. So maybe that's cool. Maybe that's the risk assessment. Okay, great. So with that, we're going to move to our next category. And the next category is data and risk. So it's funny, I was filling out an insurance form actually recently, and to renew some business insurance. And I noticed a question, and basically it was, are you one of these type of businesses? And the question was, the potential answers were like gambling, adult entertainment, and managed IT services, right? So like it gives you a good idea of like how people are actually like looking at our industry and the risk associated with it. So Dan Candy from Cork, give us kind of quick intro for you, and then obviously like how you see the risk profile of an MSP changing as AI sort of escalates all of this at an accelerated pace.
Thanks for having me, Kevin, and howdy everybody. Greetings from sunny Boulder, Colorado. I think that's an unfair grouping. Let's be honest.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, but it is what it is. So, for those of you that don't know, Cork is an inside-out cyber risk management platform, and what that really means is, actually, we were recently called, what was it? A super connector security blanket with American Express in our pocket. I thought that was kind of cute. But basically, we work with partners where we're aggregating all of the cybersecurity stack, and then we provide all of those insights back to our partners. We wrap that whole sucker up with financial protection ranging from 25K up to $500,000. And then we lock arms with cyber insurance wherever possible, and or just make sure that they're paying on behalf of the clients. And so we really try to amplify what that looks like, and make sure that the cyber insurance products work when the clients need them most. So today we work with about 38,000 MSPs and SMB customers, and our focus is keeping businesses in business. So anyways, kind of back to this topic, I'm always trying to think about the donut shop and the construction company and the architecture firm and accounting and the businesses that we're all supporting. And so when I think about what's happening these days and the revolution of AI, the output of it all, right now it's a lot of sprawl. And to be honest, I think it's terrifyingly beautiful. And people talk about it all day long. But when I think about that chart that you flashed at the very beginning and how the volume of everything is kind of up and to the right, it's kind of like, what is that, 40-50% more volume of stuff that our partners' clients are producing. And I was kind of joking with one of our partners recently. It's like, well, if the clients are increasing the digital footprint by 44% a year, is your fee increasing by 40 or 44% a year? Of course, the answer is no. And then the reality is, in my world where I'm constantly tying the risk signals and the volume of stuff to the financial implications, it's like all of that sprawl means that there is increased financial risk for our partners. And I think that exposure is scary for most of the partners that I talk to. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah, no, it's like I have noticed this as well. I was an MSP in we exited in 2018, and I don't know that I would do it again simply because of the risk. Like, it was different then, right? And it's only escalating. And so it creates a market for solutions like Quark, but it makes it very difficult for new companies to enter the space as an MSP, because the journey from the beginning was normally, I'm an IT guy. Maybe I'm freelancing on the side. I pick up a few customers. I then turn that into a business. I eventually buy into this, I have the stack, blah, blah, blah. But it's, again, this risk profile now that is put on that individual, which will eventually be a company, hopefully. It's a lot. So how are you seeing, especially like growing MSPs, handle this? And I guess I should also say, like, in terms of claims, like, are you seeing an increased claim activity, for example, with your program specifically as a result of sort of the environment changing?
Yeah, I'm going to leave claims for just a second. I realized that maybe as I was talking and then your comment, it sounded a little scary. And I don't think that's really the message that I want to push, or I don't think that's actually the reality of it.
Okay.
Just because, yes, shadow IT is being created in client environment, and there's financial risk being created, but I also think it is appropriate for modern MSPs to put that responsibility on their clients. I don't think it's appropriate for MSPs to be carrying that. And I say that because I think we live in a world where we all need financial protection, whether that's cyber insurance, cyber warranty type of products. And I think our current business owners are looking to partners to be more than IT specialists these days. And I think that our partners are looking to Cork all day long, we have conversations about how we help empower them to have those types of conversations. That's why we're aggregating tools, simplifying tools, and then turning it back over into risk signals that are tied back to money so that we can have better QBRs and, simplify those types of things around cyber insurance conversations. And so it really becomes, all right, here is your risk profile. Like we have something called the Corp score. Think Credit Karma, but for cyber, right? So here is, you're at a 550, Mr. and Mrs. Client. You need to be at a 700. When you're at a 700, that means that you're less likely to get nailed. If you do get nailed, you can almost be guaranteed that your cyber insurance will pay out. You know that Cork will definitely be paying out your 100K worth of policy and that you're going to have instant financial protection. And the reality is that you're going to stay in business. And I, your managed service provider, are going to be able to help you actually execute on some of these things. The point is that you're having a financial conversation that supports the incident response that needs to happen over here, right? And to be able to handle some of the claims that are happening. You asked about the spike in stuff, right?
Yeah.
Last year, across the 38,800-ish SMB customers that we support, we witnessed about 4.8 million compliance events. And that's across 9 different categories of IT technologies that we support. Today, I've got 105 integrations. We had 8 claims.
Oh, wow.
So a core customer is really secure, which is great. Basically, it's kind of like being an ADT customer. And we do that because we work with incredible technology companies. Many of those, they're all here on this call, and a bunch of other ones, right? Which is our ability to lock arms and go, all right, we're going to close all of these windows and doors together to make sure that our partners are more secure than other partners that aren't, in this family in this family here, because we're just trying to essentially, make sure that we're able to work together as one and do so. But the claims that did happen, the vast majority are wire transfer fraud. We had a couple ransomware. A lot of these are business email compromise because people are clicking on things that they're not supposed to be clicking on, right? People still do dumb things. My mother was one of them last year, right? Like we are all human in this crazy, crazy world we're living in.
You've educated me into submission. I'm going to start an MSP now. Would love that. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to bring everybody up and we'll just do like a quick round table with the rest of the time we have. I'll also open it up. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into either the chat. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm having trouble getting everybody on. So I'm going to just stay off to the side here. So if you have a question, feel free to plug it in the chat or in the Q&A section. But basically, for this sort of roundtable, I thought it would be good to sort of parse out like hype from reality, especially around, I would say, enablement. I feel like the general tone that I feel is getting maybe overhyped in terms of AI is like this, taking it to market, right? The added MRR and I see the playbook still being developed for the like managed intelligence provider. And, there's actually groups doing some really great stuff around that concept. And it's great that people are trying to crystallize a new model. All of that is innovation and it's needed. But I think with the enablement part, to me, I feel like is the part that gets a little fuzzy. So feel free to anybody jump in first and just sort of help me understand what's real and what's not in terms of taking AI to market and delivering it to customers and helping them sort of up that adoption curve.
One thing I'll say is it's our obligation as technology builders to make sure that the tools we create are light in the hands of our partners. Like we all work nonstop to make sure that we're just leveraging AI and a bunch of other, machine learning capabilities so that our partners don't have to learn as much to simplify some of these things. Does that make sense, Kevin? Like we want to make things dead simple as often as we can because we're trying to consolidate a lot of the noise and the message every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
I mean,
go ahead, Rob.
no, I was saying, Dan, you make a great point. Look, AI is supposed to make stuff simpler, right? It's supposed to make things easier for your clients. And there's a lot of noise out there right now. So there's an opportunity for MSPs to come in and help clear up some of that noise. And again, think what's real and applicable to that business. If you guys understand the outcome you're trying to produce for your clients, and you guys understand the scope of what, because everything's got AI in it now, right? So like, that's an opportunity for somebody like Chris who truly understands like AI can go out and produce for whatever client he's talking about. It's not a conversation about technology. It's like, hey, how are you trying to grow your business? And like, let's use the tools, the different AI stuff to help achieve that specific goal.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is before you start delivering AI enablement or transformation for your clients, you need to go through that journey yourself. And that was something that I did myself, right? I think I knew how to talk the AI game, but I was a talker. I was a talking head like I am at this moment. I wasn't a doer. And so I went through an AI enablement workshop in January, and I'll tell you, it was transformational. Our entire executive team now builds apps. Building apps is no longer the domain of just developers as much as my CTO thinks it is. We, our PM, COO, CEO, we're all building at this point, and we're all delivering. We're shipping code. It's transformational. And I've built agents that monitor the sales team. I've built agents that do outbound marketing, lead gen. I think you have to go through that yourself, and you want to go from using ChatGPT as a better search engine, as a better image generator, to actually building agents that take actions on your behalf, right? And using an OpenClaw securely is one way of doing that. But I would say, before you start delivering, AI enablement and AI services for your clients, become your own. Be AI curious is what I would say. And the fact that you're here, you're self-selected, right? It means you are AI curious, but stop reading and start coding is what I would say.
And I think the next level here, or I agree with everything that's been said, but to build a confidence in deploying these type of tools, especially in a context where you're no longer in control. There's a difference between you using a tool internally and then you deploying some of these capabilities to customers. Is how do you find confidence that the tool is doing what you intend it to do in your style and in your kind of security bounds? And a really strong tool that we're all going to become more familiar with going forward is evaluations. And so being able to define tests, essentially how you'd test a human on how to deliver service and what you would expect the response would be, and how an agent will behave on your behalf, especially if it's being used by your customers, like a tool like ours. And that's going to be able to give you as an MSP a lot more confidence that the agent's behaving the way it should in a reliable way. And I think it's going to be a core component of enablement and deployment of these tools going forward. But as you said, we're still, especially with like really the cutting edge, we're still very early, and there's a lot of deployment and experimentation to go.
The other thing I'll add is keep working backwards from whatever the business owner, business team is trying to accomplish in 2026, right? So within your MBR, QBR process, right, you're adding in this AI journey. Well, it's additive to whatever the donut shop, the construction company, the accounting firm is trying to do as their core mission anyways.
Yeah.
And so how do you use it as part of the security journey? How do you use it as part of their cultural journey? And how do you use it to add efficiency and profitability as part of their overall business outcome, right? And like keep it tied to what those core 3 or 4 components are to their pillars, and creates relevancy and into those mission, and it'll help like make sure that it remains tight as well. So
Totally, Dan. Like I'll give you guys one thing that I know, like every business owner, whether a construction company, an MSP, whatever we're talking about, right? They really only care about four things. I call it SMOF. It's like, how does this problem affect my sales? How does it affect my brand or marketability? How does it affect my operations? And then outside of cost, how is this ultimately impacting my finances? Doesn't matter who you talk to. Everyone's thinking about those things as it relates to the problem on how it affects their business. AI can absolutely affect or has implications across all SMOF, right? Do you understand your client's problems? Do you understand their SMOF implications? And I think once you fully understand that, you can craft a story that makes a lot of sense, whether it's security, whatever the things are they try to go in. Like one of my MSPs, like I found he's really successful, kicks off his discovery consultations with every client with the same three questions. Look, I work with a bunch of whatever construction companies, right? Whatever the thing is, they're all in one of three modes: maximize, minimize, or maintain, right? Maximizes, are you a growing company? Are you guys growing really fast? Minimizes, hey, maybe had a tough year, lost some clients, you're trying to save money and downsize costs. Or hey, you're already an 800-pound gorilla in the room, you're just trying to maintain your position in your industry, right? Those top level strategies all have different problems and implications associated with it, that again, you as the consultant and how you're helping these guys can apply different AI functions or different technology automations, advice to help them satisfy those areas, depending on whatever top level strategy they're at as a business.
What I would add is around monetization. So I was reading an article about what the MSP 501 MSP leaders are doing, right, when it comes to AI. And obviously they are utilizing AI not only for operational efficiencies in-house, but also for monetization. And one of the CEOs there, which I really loved, is MSPs ultimately are small, medium businesses themselves. And any real problem they solve internally as an MSP using AI is something they can also productize, put in a bill line item, and start selling to their SMB. So this CEO was mentioning that they, use AI and a workflow to really handle their accounting for them at the end of each month in a much better way than they used to do before. And if they can now do that themselves, they will find ways to monetize that for the small, medium businesses out there that have similar problems. So, try to solve what your pain points internally, and then see how they would apply to some of the client segments in your market that you're going after.
It's a great point, Peter.
We have a question that I'm going to put up on the screen. I'm going to read it because it doesn't fit, but it's from Regan. So he actually had a great observation, which is that ServiceNow is pushing hard on AI and data consolidation with 60% price lift for Pro Plus AI uplifts. They're presenting business cases that almost always include reducing MSP service fees to pay for the uplift. So basically, they have enterprise salespeople that are basically saying, we can reduce your MSP bill, you just need these features. So how do your solutions, meaning you on the panel, play with ServiceNow or other client tools that try to limit MSP service costs? So the way I take that is, how can you help these MSPs contend against these sort of boots on the ground enterprise class salespeople that are coming in to, swap their service with essentially a software solution?
It sounds like a softball for Chris.
Yeah. So I guess that tools like Super IT will help deliver these type of services that these ServiceNow type of providers are kind of arguing against any solution. So we integrate kind of with any ticketing system and not just one vendor support. I guess the pushback against delivering through AI, reducing your MSP costs, there is a reality that level 1 type help desk support is going to change in the future, but that doesn't mean that the value that you as an MSP will provide will not change either, and you'll be able to deliver higher value work. And so we don't know exactly, to be honest, the change to service, and definitely not in the next 12 months to 24 months, you're going to see significant costs like 60% reduction in customer MSP fees. I think the reality on the ground is just going to be not reflective of this kind of sales pitch. But as an MSP, you'll be able to deliver these type of services through your customers in a trusted way with tools of your own. And I think that the concept of being personable, what we've talked about here, being understanding of your client's requirements, understanding of being that kind of that partner that really understands a business and more than just an IT support, and more of a business coach or a business consultant is going to be where a lot of the value is, setting your customers up to use these tools internally as well. So that's how I would see it.
Yeah, really in a meaningful way. Cork pays for incident response. I recently paid a partner $6,000 to do that first level of incident response. Another one was $400 to do 2 hours worth of IR. Like, we want to be able to empower partners to jump in, get their hands on, be able to do things and service clients. Kind of on that flip side is where cyber insurance companies are trying to act like MSPs, and these enterprise companies are trying to do things and act like they're in our business, and a lot of times they struggle. It smells like it, but it's not really the right thing. And I think our managed service providers actually know how to service SMB customers better than anybody else in the world, and we collectively know how to love and perform with our partners better than anybody else, because we're all purpose built to support this ecosystem. So I appreciate enterprise folks. I worked at AWS for a while, and I understand some of this stuff. But honestly, it's a different beast.
I think you're bringing a good point, Dan. Is like a lot of these enterprise companies that are trying to come down in the market. This is not new. They've been trying to do this in the MSP space for a very long time, and they all struggle with it because you got to remember, they're enterprise people deal with way different problems than the SMB or even like lower mid-level market does. There's totally different challenges they're facing, and a lot of times those big enterprise companies can't relate because a lot of times they're running on their big name, right? Hey, we're XY, we're Cisco, we're Amazon, we're whatever. Like, you already heard of us, so they don't feel the need to really even have to understand their clients at the SMB levels business problems, right? They assume the weight of their name is enough to kind of carry it on and make them want to and build that trust. And in reality, again, guys, it's the same challenge we've all been talking about: is how well do you understand how your technology, whatever you're doing for them, whatever stuff you're fixing, how does that help make or save your clients money? How does that help them grow? It's really that simple. If you fully understand how that, and the specifics are the key. The more specific it is, the more powerful that advice becomes.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Pinar.
I'm sorry. I'll be brief. So there are two aspects to this, right? And I think that's why, for example, Top Down Ventures is trying to bring this modern stack for the modern MSP, because we live in the new world, and with AI now, these things are, enterprise companies will always try to come down, and it's all about helping MSPs to live in this new world with an AI first mentality. So there are two aspects to this. Of course, margins, two things to it: either increase your revenues, but also decrease your top line. So operational efficiency is utilizing AI to the extent possible is ultimately very important. It will remain important. That's one of the things Lexful, as an AI native documentation solution, is here to help. But on top of that, solutions like Lexful are much more than giving technicians much faster time to context, time to resolution. It's also around customer success, virtual CIO services, and, if you will, this managed intelligence provider versus just a managed service provider, right? So suddenly, if you have documentation across your clients, across operational memory, across context, and you put AI into that, you have client trends, you have best practices, you have strategic output that you can give to your clients versus just being a reactive service provider. So you can be very proactive in actually how you talk to clients and what you talk to them about with solutions in this modern stack that you have available now to you. Yeah, it's all about business outcomes, really.
That's a great point, Pinar. Like, man, this company's amazing. The documentation. I know. I talk to many MSPs all the time. I know most of you guys don't update your documentation as regularly as you should. So this is it's a great solution. Like I said, top down kind of brings us all together. to make it easy for for MSPs to kind of grow their businesses or help scale and across the board. Like our solution's super easy, right? Benji Pays. We just help you guys get paid a lot easier, faster, and more efficiently. Like nobody likes reconciling in their QuickBooks. Nobody needs to be taking manual payments anymore. It is 2026, guys. If you guys are still, manually inputting payments and taking payments that way, guys, there's way easier ways to do this nowadays. So again, we just try to help you guys focus on what matters in your business and not running around collecting on your invoices. That's kind of our benefit to small MSPs. You guys have other fish to fry.
To take on the commenter, because it's an interesting one from Reagan, I would look at that as an opening salvo in the AI wars, where you're going to have a number of firms start to say, you don't need this service provider because I have an AI agent that can take care of this far cheaper, right? And the economics of it are compelling. So I think it's an opening salvo. There's no reason to panic, but it is cause for you to start on that AI journey yourself and start to think about how you can get AI enabled, start using AI first products like the teams that are here. And the way we think about it in cybersecurity is you have choices today in market as to which cybersecurity tooling you want to use. What you need to think about is, are you getting a tool that was built in the 2020s? Or are you looking for one that's going to carry you through to 2030, right? And I would submit that the ones that are based on agentic architectures are the ones that will carry you through to 2030 in the threat landscape that is out there today.
Awesome. And so that was a great, actually, like kind of closing question. So I'm going to leave it there. We're already a few minutes over time. So again, just wanted to recap. The recording will be available at this same link immediately after the session. I'm actually going to create a summary that we'll send out. We're also going to create some articles on MSP growth hacks from this content, which will be going out over the next few weeks and months. And other than that, we'll follow up with an email as well with links for all the solutions that you heard today. So look out for that. And thank you all for joining.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.